you have your Bibles, you can turn to the book of Matthew. Matthew chapter 5 today. We take a break for the summer from our study in Mark's Gospel. We're going to look at how we as believers, how we as a church can, or how we should interact with our world, how we navigate this world that we live in. I saw a story of I read of a couple who took their young son and daughter to some caverns in New Mexico. When the tour guide brought them into the deepest part of the cavern, he turned off all the lights to show them how dark it was below the earth's surface. Well, this scared the little girl, and being surrounded by darkness, she began to cry. And then her little brother said, "Don't cry. Someone here knows how to turn on the light." And that's what this world needs. We live in a world of darkness, and somebody needs to turn on the light. This world needs the light desperately. And we are the light of the world. And that's what we're going to see in our passage here this morning in Matthew chapter 5. We are here to make a difference. We're here to make an impact and influence our community for Jesus Christ. And that's what we want to look at this summer, is how we can do that. How are we supposed to do that? How are we supposed to interact with our world? Because we have some choices. As Christians, we can try to isolate ourselves from the world, from what's going on. We can hide under a rock, plug our ears, close our eyes, and pretend it's not happening, and hope that all the problems go away. Or we can be an armchair quarterback and sit back and complain about how bad the world is, about how it used to be better. And if I were in charge, it would be this way. We could all do that. We can be angry. We can be belligerent toward those who disagree with us. We can shake our heads and we can shake our fists at what society is all about. Or we can adopt the philosophy of, well, if I can't beat them, I'll join them. I'll just run headlong and participate in everything that the world is doing. Or we can be a light. And that's what Jesus tells us to be in our text this morning. He gives us another way in which we're to interact with our world. He says that we are to shine as lights because we are the lights in the world. So how are we to interact with our world, our community, the people at work, the people that maybe in your home, the people in school? We're to light. We're to be a light. We're to shine. And that's what our series is going to be all about. And so we begin today in Matthew chapter 5. Our text comes in the most famous, well-known sermon ever given and ever written. It's in Jesus Christ's Sermon on the Mount. Here in this sermon, he gets to the heart of real living, the heart of righteousness. It's believed that this was Jesus' go-to sermon. Every preacher has a go-to sermon. At least I think they do. I have mine. They'll use it if they're asked to speak somewhere else as much as they can, because it's that go-to sermon. And this is believed to be Christ's go-to sermon. So when you hear him preaching and teaching, there's a good chance he's preaching this message. And so this passage that we're looking at today comes right after the famous Beatitudes, where he shows us what godly character looks like. And now he's saying how you're to live that godly character out. And so let's look at Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 through 16 this morning. He says, "Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick. And it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for the time that we can spend in your word. Thank you for giving us your word. Lord, we thank you that you've given us everything that we need to live a life of godliness. And Lord, as we look into your word together now, we ask that your Spirit would work in our hearts and our minds, that you might shed light on where we need to be convicted. You might encourage us where we need to be encouraged. You might instruct us where we need to be instructed, so that we might go out from these walls and be the lights that you call us to be. We pray that you might be magnified and glorified in all that we do. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Limington, Maine, and the surrounding communities need East Limington Baptist Church to faithfully follow Jesus Christ. They need us to faithfully shine as the lights that we are, because we are here to be an influence in this world. And that's what Jesus is telling us here in this passage. And he gives us 4 reasons why we are to shine as lights in the world. The first reason we're to shine is because the world is a dark place. The world is in darkness. In verse 14, Jesus says to his followers, "You are the light of the world." Now, when do you need light? You don't need to go outside and flash it. It's trying to flashlight because it's plenty lit out there already. You need a light when it's dark. When you're in the dark, you can't see, you stumble around, you don't know where you're going, you can't find your way. In fact, just thinking about this, there was one time when, it must have been long after Valerie and I got married. We were living in our mobile home, in the bedroom, at the end of the hallway. One night it was dark, I got up in the middle of the night and I must have had to use the bathroom or something. And the doorway is right straight out, so I can get up out of bed and go straight out the doorway, but somehow I got off the bed at a weird angle and I started heading toward the corner. I couldn't see where I was going. And I'm stuck. I'm walking around, and I don't know where I'm going. I'm feeling around, and Valerie wakes up because there's quite a bit of commotion. She says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to get out of here." and I couldn't see because it was so dark. And apparently I don't know how to get out of bed at a straight line. But I'm stumbling around, and I had no way. I had no idea where I was. I was never going to get out if she hadn't got up and turned on the light. I'd be stuck there all night. Which wouldn't have been a good thing, but that's the world we live in today. We have the world stumbling around, feeling their way through, trying to figure out how to get where they're going, and they don't know where they're going. And so they make up the rules as they go along. They're stumbling around, and that's why you see the definition of good and evil changing all the time. The world lies in darkness. And darkness in the Bible is used to speak of evil, sin, and ignorance. You look out, you watch the news, that's what you see here. And the reason for that is the Bible teaches us that the unbelieving heart is darkened. In Romans 1:21 it says, "Although they knew God, were aware that there is a God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but instead they became futile in their thinking. In their foolish hearts," it says, "were darkened." That's the world. That's the sinful world we live in. Their understanding is darkened. They can't see. They need a light. Ephesians 4:18 speaks of life apart from Christ, before salvation in him. It says, having their understanding darkened, they were alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their hearts. And that's the world that we find ourselves in. It's like that cavern. It's like that bedroom, and it's dark. And because of that, people love darkness rather than light, the Bible tells us. They love sin rather than holiness. They love deception rather than reality, rather than truth. They love self rather than God. The world needs the light. It was Lady Macbeth who said it this way. She said, "Come thick night, and pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife see not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark. They long for the darkness of this world to cover over their evil deeds and blind the almighty holy God from their depravity." Isn't that right? They long for the darkness of this world to cover over their evil deeds. Shakespeare would be useful, right? Jesus says it this way in John chapter 3. He says, "And this is the condemnation, that the light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil." They want to cover their deeds, so they love the darkness. "For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds be reproved." That's the world. Darkness describes the human condition without Jesus Christ. Darkness describes this world without Jesus Christ. It's a life of evil. It's a life of separation from God himself. That's the position that every single unbeliever finds themselves in today. That's where the majority of the world's population finds themselves today. This is where you and I were before we found Jesus Christ, before Christ saved us. We were in darkness. We needed the light of the world. Because of that darkness, God entered into this world to be that light. Jesus himself says in John 8:12, he says, "I am the light of the world." And he says, "He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life." And in John 12:46, he says, "I am come a light unto the world, into the world, that whoever believeth on me should not abide in darkness." And so Jesus came into this darkness because the world is a dark place. And he came to save us. He came to rescue us, to save us from the punishment that our sin deserves. Because the Bible teaches that the soul that sins will die, and that the wages of sin is death. That includes physical death, but it also includes spiritual death, which is eternal conscious torment in the lake of fire. That's the penalty we face because of our sin against the holy Creator. But God, in His grace, sends light. He sends Jesus to rescue the world from that fate. And so Jesus was a man who was, God and man, who was punished on a cross as our substitute, the just for the unjust. So that when we admit our sinfulness, we admit our need for a Savior, and we ask Him to save us, He saves us. He will forgive us. And so that's why Jesus enters into His creation. Because we were all born into sin with no way out of the darkness. We had no light until Jesus came in. And those of us who Jesus has saved, it says we are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that we should show forth the praises of Him who has called us out of darkness into His marvelous light. It tells us in 1 Peter 2:9. And so because we have been called out of darkness into His light, we are to bear witness of that light. We are to reflect that light. Because the rest of the world is still in darkness. And they need the light. The world needs the church. The world needs us to be a light. And Jesus, when He spoke these words to His followers, and when the early church read these words, the world was very much a dark place. It was dark. Roman culture of this day and age, they mocked heterosexuality. Child prostitution was commonplace. Drug use, pornography was everywhere. We even have a letter written a year before the birth of Christ where one man says to his wife, he says these words, "If you have our child while I'm away and it's a boy, let it live. If it's a girl, expose it and let it die." That was the culture at the time of Christ. And after Christ, after His resurrection, at the time of the early church, this is what was going on. It's not any different today. This is the evil. This is the wickedness. This is what sin does to a world. It darkens it. And so it's against this backdrop that Jesus says this, that the early church read these words, that we read them today. That Jesus calls us this same task. That He calls us to be a light. Why? Because the world is a very, very dark place. It is ignorant, it is evil, it is wicked, and it loves the darkness. But what it needs is Jesus Christ. That's why Jesus came. And that's why Jesus gives us this responsibility to be the light in the world. And that's, secondly, what we look at. We are the light of the world. The world is a dark place, and we are the light. That's what Jesus says in verse 14. Look at it. It says, "You, or ye, are the light of the world." We're the ones that Jesus calls to impact our communities, to influence our communities, to influence our neighbors, our friends, our co-workers, the world that we live in. That is up to you and me. And the way it's written in the Greek is it's very emphatic. It's written like you twice are the light of the world. We would read it, you and you alone. And it's also in the plural, so it's you guys. You guys and you guys alone. That's how we would say it today. Are the light of the world. So it's not Oprah. It's not the Pope. It's not Dr. Phil. It's not anyone else. It's not the president. It's not an angel from heaven that Jesus says is the light of the world. He says it's to His followers. He says you. He says me. We are the light of the world. Now, astute Bible students are thinking, well, isn't Jesus the light of the world? You're right. He is. But Jesus says in John 9:5, He says, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. But now, Jesus has given that responsibility to us. We are to carry the torch for Jesus Christ. Isn't that exciting? We get to pick up where Jesus left off. We get to take His ministry. We get to do what He was doing in this world. We're His followers, His church. We're the ones who have the opportunity to impact and influence this world with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We're the ones that Jesus gives the responsibility to preach His word, to preach the good news to. We're the ones that can bring hope to this world, this hopeless world, this world that's stumbling and doesn't know where it's going, that needs a light. We're the ones that can bring it. So what that means is we have an important job. You and I might be the only light that some people ever see. Did you ever think about that? You might be the only light that your neighbor sees. You might be the only light that your coworker sees. You might be the only Christian in your neighborhood, or in your school, or wherever you are. You might be the one that Jesus wants to use to bring hope to the people in your life. And we don't get to opt out of this. We don't get to say, well, leave the light shining to the Sunday school teachers, the pastors, the missionaries, the Christian school teachers, or some other qualified individual. Let them be the light. No, every single person in this building who has a relationship with Jesus Christ, we are called to be the light. We have been called out of darkness into the light, and we are to be children of the light, and we are to shine that light. What does that mean? Well, throughout this series, we're going to look at ways in which we can be the light. So I can't get into all of it today. You'll have to keep coming back. That's what they do on TV, right? Keep watching or keep reading. But simply put, it means that we are to show the righteous, holy, loving, and gracious character of Jesus Christ to the world. We're to share it with our lips, and we're to show it by the way we live. We're to reflect Jesus Christ in our attitudes, our actions, and our affections. We're to share the gospel with others. And so being a light means preaching the gospel and reflecting the character of Jesus Christ and how we live. We're kind of like the moon. You've probably heard the illustration before. The moon doesn't give off any light of its own. We're able to see the moon as it lights up the sky, as it reflects the sun. You know, there are some nights when it's so bright out there that it almost looks like daylight. There have been times when I've looked out, seen lights, and thought somebody was in my driveway with their high beams on. It's been so bright. And that's what Jesus wants us to be. He wants us to reflect the light so brilliant that it lights up this darkness. One writer says, at times the church has been a full moon, dazzling the world with an almost daytime light. And at other times the church has been only a thumbnail moon, with very little light shining upon the earth. But whether the church is a full moon or a thumbnail moon, waxing or waning, it reflects the light of the sun. I thought I was the only one that called it a fingernail moon, but I guess not. And the question we have to ask ourselves, though, is how well are we reflecting the sun? Are we shining brightly in this world? And I've used this illustration before too, but I like it and it works. There's a little boy who attended church with a beautiful stained glass window that would picture the saints, St. Matthew, St. Mark, St. Luke, St. John, St. Paul, and others. And one day he was asked, well, what's a saint? And he would reply, a saint is the one that the light shines through. And that's the church. We're the ones that the light shines through. That's who we are. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is, what do others learn of Jesus Christ by our lives? What are we teaching others about Jesus Christ? By the way we talk, by the way we walk, the things that we do, the things that we enjoy, the things that we're pursuing. Well, what does the world see? Are they seeing a light? Because they should, as they see our lives. Christ said with emphasis, you and you alone, you are the light of the world. And so this means that the only way that the world will ever find hope, that they will ever find the solution to their problems, spiritually and morally, will come through Christians. Because we are the light of the world, no one else. And so it makes sense that Jesus would say what he says next. Because we are the light, we're the ones who reflect him, we cannot hide that, nor should we hide that. And that's what he says. He says, a city on a hill, that is set on a hill, cannot be hidden. And then he says, neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick. And it giveth light unto all that are in the house. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Travelers back in those days, they didn't have cars with lights or high beams or neon signs or anything like street lights or anything like that. And so travelers would typically drive. They would walk, drive their camels. No, they would walk during the day. But sometimes they might get caught and they might get dark. And so darkness would then put the traveler in danger because you get thieves lurking and anyone else who might want to take advantage of the wayward traveler would come out at night. But when the traveler could see the lights, the city lights, the city on the hill that's lit up, it would bring direction to that wayward traveler. You could go from city to city noticing those cities on the hill with the lights coming from. And that brought comfort, it brought hope, it brought security in their hopelessness. And so that's what Jesus is saying here. He says, the city on the hill cannot be hidden. It's kind of like a lighthouse for the ships at sea. And so he says his followers, you and me, should function the same way. We are the light. We are the ones that can bring the hope. We're the ones that can bring the security. We're the ones that can bring light into this darkness, the light of the gospel. We bring the gospel to this world as we share it with others. We bring light as we live differently. And so the church is to be a place of hope, a place of comfort, also conviction, I guess, for the unsaved as well. But a city that is on a hill cannot be hidden. We cannot hide the fact either that you and I are different. The world understands that Christians are supposed to be different. I think they understand this. In fact, a number of years ago, when I was helping my brother coach a Greater Portland Christian School, the team received the Sportsmanship Award, and they had a ceremony, a pregame ceremony at St. Joseph's College before the championship games. And before we got the award, I overheard someone say, well, shouldn't they win it every year? The implication being, they're Christians. They should be different. They may not be good at sports, but they're good sports. No, that's not what he said. But that's the idea, right? We should be different. We should be good sports. We can't hide it. Let's try it as we may. Often we want to hide it. And so Jesus says that's ridiculous. That's foolish to try to hide your light. And that's what he says in verse 15. He says, neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Who in their right mind says, hold on, let me light this candle so you can see. What are you doing, right? Why would you do that? We don't turn on a light just to say, well, my kids do. But I don't typically turn on a light and then shut it right off. Okay, see, it works, maybe then, but why does anyone turn on a light? In those days, you didn't light candles to make your houses smell better. Well, because company was coming and you wanted to cover up the dog smell. Just so you know. Or because you were celebrating a birthday party, which I don't really know why we do that either, but you needed the light. That's why you lit a candle. And so the last thing you're going to do is cover it up as soon as you light it. No one does this. And God didn't save us to cover us up, for us to hide, for us to be like the world, to be like the darkness. As Christians, we hide when we isolate ourselves from the world. There's a few ways we can do this. When we fail to get out in our communities, when we fail to bring the gospel with us, that's one way we hide our light. When we fail to offer that hope that only Jesus Christ can bring to the world, that's hiding our light. We also hide our light when we blend in with the world, when we want the same things as the world, when we react the same ways as unbelievers. Right? When we're just as critical and harsh and backstabbing and ruthless as the people of the world. When we fail to love one another and we treat each other horribly. We're blending in. The thing about light is it's distinctly different from the darkness. You don't mistake the two. And the same thing is to be said about believers in the church. We're to be different. In the Old Testament, God called Israel to be different from the world around them. Israel was supposed to be a light unto the Gentiles, a light to the nation. They were to be different in order to influence them. Well, what happened? They let the world influence Israel, right? That's sadly what happens to the Christian church today. Too many Christians, too many churches have spent so much of their time trying to blend in, trying to find ways to be as much like the world as humanly possible, to meet the world's approval. And what does it happen? It diminishes our influence. It diminishes our effectiveness. Because when the church starts acting like the world, it's not useful to anyone. It might be a place to go and have a good time, but it's not really bringing Jesus to anyone or bringing anyone to Jesus. It's the equivalent of lighting a candle and putting a bowl on top of it so it won't shine. Well, it's lit, but you can't see it. You can't do that. Because when we hide the light, the world doesn't get to see Jesus Christ. And And they stumble around in darkness with no hope of finding their way out. And then they try to figure it out their own way, and they wind up in a corner of a room somewhere, like I was going to do if I had turned the light on in the bed. God didn't leave us here to hide our lights. He left us here to reflect His brilliance. My kids are prone to leaving the lights on in the house. Maybe it's a kid thing, because I probably did when I was a kid. They rarely ever turn them off. Sometimes when we get back from church, they left their light on in their room. And I'm constantly going around shutting lights off. I'm trying to remind them, turn the lights off. Well, God doesn't want us to turn our lights off. He doesn't want us to cover our lights. He wants us to keep shining and continue shining brightly. Because the fact of the matter, a light that's hidden, a light that's covered is useless. It's not helpful. And Jesus calls us to be the influence of this world. And so when we look like the world, when our weekends consistently look no different than our unsaved coworker, when our conversations continue to contain the same off-color remarks and vulgarity as everyone else, we treat others just as harshly and rudely as those around us, we blend in instead of being that light. We look more like darkness instead of the light. If we live completely separate from Jesus Christ, we are not fulfilling our calling. And we fail to share the life-changing message of the gospel, we're not accomplishing God's purposes for our lives. Jesus says, you are the light of the world. Don't hide it. And thirdly, Jesus says, he says, let your light shine. He commands it. We shine because the world is dark. We shine because we are the lights. And we shine because Jesus tells us to in verse 16. He says, let your light so shine before men. Don't hide it. Let it shine, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. He says, get out there and light up the darkness. This is the only command in this section. Allow your light to shine. That's the job of light, right? That's what it does. That's what it's supposed to do. We're mad when we hit the switch and it doesn't work. Or when the power's gone out and we forget the power's gone out and it doesn't work. Come on, light. You're supposed to light. That's what lights do. We shouldn't have to command it to, but I don't have any voice-activated lights in my home, but I guess those are a thing, but that would be fun. But Jesus commands us to shine, because that's what lights do. In other words, it's allow Jesus Christ to radiate through your life, because He's the true light. Or we're bear witnessing of the true light. God could have taken us out of this world the moment He saved us, but He didn't, because He has a purpose for us. And our purpose is to radiate His brilliance. It's to show His glory. We're to influence His world for Jesus Christ. And so how do we do that? How do we let Jesus shine through our lives? Again, we're not to be isolated. We can't be isolated from the world. The darker the world, the brighter our light needs to be. Even a dim light shines brightly in a dark world. I'm not calling us dim, but it's important that we get out into the world and preach the gospel. We share Jesus Christ with our words and with our walk. And so He says, let your light shine so that before men, so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So we preach the word, we preach the gospel, because nobody's going to get saved without hearing the gospel message. But we also must live for Christ. He says, let them see your good works. Now, there are two main words in the Greek for good. One means moral goodness. The other one means moral goodness and that which is attractive, that which is appealing to the eye. And that's the word that Jesus uses here. So our works, the things that we do in this world, are to be morally good, but they're also to be pleasing to the eye. They're to be attractive to others. So this is beyond what the Pharisees had, right? They had this, look at me, I'm so good. But Jesus says, no, your good works should accurately depict Jesus Christ. They should be works that attract. One writer says, too often Christians, even by their moral good in ministry, repel men and people. He says we can be just like the religious Pharisees, or we can engage in, or this is what else, also what we do, we engage in Christian activities, church and Sunday school, but then we lack in Christian character. Our attitudes are not good. Our faithfulness is not good. we're not honest, and we don't have integrity, and then we kill our testimony. We can have the outward goodness, but Jesus is talking about outward and inward goodness that comes from the heart. He's talking about works that come from the Spirit working in our lives. In Galatians 5, 22 and 20 through 23. These are the works that Jesus wants the world to see in us. Works that come from the heart. Words that are motivated from the Spirit. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And so that's what Jesus wants us to do. That's what he wants us to be. Our work should reflect the attitudes of Jesus Christ, as seen as the Spirit works in us. And so the works that glorify the Father are works that are done in love. They're the works that are done with joy, that bring peace. They come from patience and gentleness and meekness. Basically, if you went back and read the Beatitudes, that's it. That's the heart of the good works that Jesus is looking for here. In verses 3 through 6 of the Beatitudes, you have the right attitude toward God. It's one of humility and repentance. And then verses 7 through 12, you have the right attitude toward people. Right? You have merciful. You have pure in heart, peaceful, willing to endure persecution. Those are the good works that Jesus is talking about here. A life that is so different from the world, it's so distinct that it shines as a light in this darkness. And so shining our lights is about something far more important than boycotting Starbucks. It's far more profound than trying to get unbelievers to live like Christians through laws. And I'm not opposed to laws that make people, that protect life and those types of things. But it's about more than that. Shining as lights is about how you and I live, not as much about how our neighbor lives. It's about our testimony in the lives of those around us. It's about our holiness that is in such stark contrast to the world around us. And so he says essentially here, be who you are in Christ. You and I are followers of Christ. We are different now because Jesus Christ has saved us and he lives in us through the Holy Spirit. And so we have to be different. It doesn't make us better than the world around us, but it does make us different. And so we're to look different. And so the question is, do our marriages look different than the world? Do we raise our kids differently than those around us? Do we have different priorities? Do we treat every single person with respect and dignity? Do we show mercy? Do we show love? Do we show patience? Do we show kindness to our enemies and to those that disagree with us? Do we talk differently about different things? Do we have a joy and peace that the world knows nothing of? Again, we're not going to do any of this perfectly. But again, that's the difference. When we mess up, how do we respond? Are we repentant? Do we seek forgiveness or do we cover it up? That's the stuff that sets us apart. How do we respond and react to tragedy and trials and difficulties? Is that different than the world? We are to shine accurately and represent Jesus Christ accurately in our message and in our conduct. We shine, we preach the gospel message, and we live a life that has been transformed by the gospel. And then he says, do this so that they might glorify your Father which is in heaven. We do this in order to give God the glory. The Pharisees had this backwards. They were like, look at my works so that you can glorify me. Jesus says, do your works so that they say, wow, look at the God that they serve. In other words, we want people to see our lives, hear our words, and come away thinking, if God can change that guy, he must be an awesome God. I remember him. He was, now look at him. That God, he must be an awesome God. That's what Jesus is talking about. And I know it's not always going to work this way, but people aren't always going to be attracted to our lives. Some people it may lead to persecution. Jesus just warned about that. It may lead to ridicule. But we're to reflect Jesus Christ so that it would glorify God. And that may lead to opportunities to encourage somebody else, to share Jesus Christ with somebody else. It may be your attitude, your actions that make someone else take notice and say to themselves, there's something different about him or her. I wonder what's up with that person. They're like a breath of fresh air. They're not like other people. I wonder why they're like that. And then you get to say, well, it's not me, it's Jesus. Or, I know you guys are going through a ton of stuff, but how in the world do you keep keep it all together? How do you have such a great attitude? And again, you get to say, it's not me, it's Jesus. Or maybe a coworker, student, customer is downright mean and rude and harsh to you. And you handle it with grace and mercy. And people notice that. And then someone says, how do you do that? How do you handle being treated so rotten? You say, it's not me, it's Jesus. That's what Jesus is talking about here. It's not me, it's Jesus. The reason why I can do this, the reason why I have this peace, the reason why I have this joy, the reason why I am the way that I am, it's not me, it's Jesus Christ. And so he says, let those good works, let them see those good works, so that your Father in heaven might be glorified. That's how we glorify God. And so the bottom line for us as a church, for us as believers, is that we're to live lives of influence in our communities, in our neighborhoods, where God has us. Because this world is a hopeless, dark place. And without the Church of Jesus Christ faithfully representing him here in this world will remain in darkness. We are the lights. And Jesus leaves us here for that reason, to reflect him, to shine as lights in this world. And as this world gets darker, we have got to be prepared to shine our lights. We must be prepared to help people in this darkness, to counsel people in this world. Right? As drug use increases, as abortions continue, as sexual perversion continues, we will see more and more damage done to people. More and more broken lives. And we have to be prepared to respond, to help, to share the light, to bring the hope. You and I have the answers that this troubled world needs. We have Jesus Christ. We have the Scriptures. And we have to be prepared to meet people where they are. Because they're lost in a cavern of darkness. They're lost in a bedroom of darkness. And you and I are the ones that have the light. The only ones that have the light. So we cannot hide that light. We have to share that light. We have to shine that light. That's what Jesus tells us to do here. So the question that we have to ask ourselves, are we reflecting that light of Jesus Christ? As a church and as individuals. Or are we hiding that light? So what can you do this week to shine more effectively for Jesus Christ? Maybe you have a coworker who's dealing with some issues. And you're just like, I don't need one person. You have the light. Maybe your kids need to see Jesus in you. Maybe someone you know needs encouragement. I don't know, but ask yourself and ask God to help you shine this week for Jesus Christ. And how can we as a church make sure that we are shining brightly for Christ? That's what we want to look at the rest of the series this summer. We need to shine. Not much we know. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you. Lord, we thank you for the light of Christ, the light of the gospel. Lord, we know that this world is in darkness. Lord, we were there. Every single one of us was born in darkness. And yet in your grace, and in your mercy and your love, you shine the light into our lives. You brought Jesus Christ into this world. You sent him into this world. He came into this world. And by your grace, you have saved sinners such as us. And Lord, now we get the privilege and responsibility to shine that light into this dark world. Father, help us to do that. Give us the power to do that. Give us the boldness, the willingness to do that. Because this world needs Jesus Christ more than it needs anything else. And Father, we're the ones that have the truth. We're the ones that have the light. Lord, may we be boldly shining that light in our words and in our walk, so that the world may glorify you. Father, that's what we want. We want you to be glorified. We want you to be magnified. And Father, we want you to be magnified in our lives, and in our church, in this community. And now, Lord, as we depart from here, and as we go out from these walls, I'd ask you to use us today, to to help us shine as a light, even today, and bring us safely back this evening as we pray. As we pray for your will to be done in this world. Lord, we ask all this in Jesus' name.